Hello everybody, welcome, thank you so much for having me. Today's class we are, is this an Ilui Nishmas? So we're gonna have in mind Shlomo Zalman ben Mordechai. For his soul should have an elevation, that we dedicate our learning to him, and anybody else who needs a refuah shalema, which is a healing of any kind, they should be included in our learning and have the zechus of being included in our learning and our prayers. Okay. So welcome everybody. So today is the day after the yahrzeit of the Ari, and it was we're coming to you here live from Sfat, Israel, northern Israel, and this is the home of Kabbalah. This is the place where the Kabbalists 400 or 500 years ago did a lot of the compiling of the Kabbalah that we have in the modern age. And so the day before and the day after of a great tzadik's yahrzeit is included in the yahrzeit. So we're really still in that time that the soul of this great person is there. We have a lot of access to that person. So the Ari HaKodesh was one of our greatest Kabbalists of all time, top 2 or 3. And so we have Rabbi Fishman Bar Yochai, and then we have the Ari, who really did a lot of the work so that we could understand the interior aspect of the Torah. So yesterday was an amazing time here. We went down to the cemetery, and there's just tremendous energy there. People praying, people crying, people laughing, and trying to connect to the inner aspect of the Torah, the light, draw down the light that reforms. That's how in Ashlag, that's how we refer to it. Is this recording? Yes, it is. Okay. So we had an amazing, unbelievable classes here yesterday. We have. I want to talk a little bit about the teachers here. We've Shlomo Gatzi, who's running the program here, has put together a spectrum of teachers, and each teacher has their own perspective and their own derech. So it's first of all important to say that it's one Torah, and what we're trying to do is trying to get out to the world. There's different styles and different ways of describing the very same thing. And so we have a range of Torah, and if anybody finds one teacher and one method that is appealing to them and that they feel connected to, they feel their soul is being spoken to, then that is a huge success. And so if there are differences between the different styles, then that's something that you don't necessarily have to be concerned about. What's more important is that you're connecting to any of the kosher styles, meaning that there's a great master rabbi at the head of this methodology, and that person has followers and is trying to write down their Torahs, their explanation of the Torah, in order to reach us so that we can understand what's going on. Okay, so yesterday we had there were a lot of festive meals in Tzfat, and one of the festive meals was the Ashlag rabbi, one of the great Ashlag rabbis of this generation. His name is Rabbi Gottlieb, and we had a festive meal to commemorate the yahrzeit of the Ari HaKodesh. And I'd just like to speak to everybody here and everybody who's reaching us online that I approached the rabbi. I know him for over 10 years, probably close to 15 years, and I've been studying in his derech for that amount of time. And I told him that we have a group here where we're teaching Ashlag, we're studying Ashlag, and I told him that I was teaching, and I think that it's a very, if anybody starts to teach and they're not concerned that maybe they are not ready for the job, then that's an indication that they're probably not ready for the job. So a person should have a certain amount of humility and say, hey, is this something that I should be doing? So the Rabbi Gottlieb gave me his blessing and said that we should continue here. And I told him that we have a desire to be connected to his group, and we'll see if there's, in the future, if the group is built and we have people who are interested, perhaps we'll have teachers from Rabbi Gottlieb or Rabbi Gottlieb himself coming here to talk to us. He speaks primarily Hebrew, but he does speak some English. But I just wanted to let everybody know that Rabbi Gottlieb gave us his blessing and said that he's very happy that we are trying to give over. This is one of the few places where you can have observant Torah Jewish students learning in English. There's still not a lot of people who are studying Ashlag Kaballah who are observant Jews who are studying in English. So everybody who's part of this group should feel that we're like pioneers trying to bring out the Torahs. It's every teacher has a desire to reach as many students as possible, to try to help as many people as possible. So one of the things that we do in Torah Judaism is that whatever derech, whatever path we're on, we try to reach other people and share the material and get people, so that if a person's soul feels connected to your way of teaching, of the master's way of teaching, that they have access to it. So that's one of the main tenets of, if you want to move forward in spirituality, is that you make your Torah available to people. We're not talking about forcing people. We're not talking about debating people about whose method is better. We're talking about trying to put the material out there so that people can find it. Okay. So I was working for the academy yesterday, and so I shoot camera and I do editing, and so I was working, so I did not get to hear any of the classes. So anything that I say today, you can be sure is not in direct opposition or a counter argument to anything anybody else has said, because I didn't listen to anybody else because I was working yesterday, and so the only person that I heard was the wonderful, wonderful talk that Rav Turgeman gave yesterday we went down to the cemetery, and he spoke for around 15 minutes, and I was just really taken aback, first of all, by all the teachers here, and secondly, by Rav Turgeman, why he was able to so eloquently and simply express what it is that we're in need of, and what the Torah is trying to accomplish, what the goal of Torah Judaism is. And so, is there anybody here who heard Rabbi Torah yesterday? Okay, so we have a few people here, so I won't try to paraphrase because he was so eloquent and so beautiful, but basically, what his point is that we're trying to get up to a place of peace. And you see in today's world that peace seems to be the most elusive quality on every level, both inside our internal worlds and in our personal relationships with other people, within our community and within our nations and within the whole world as a whole. It seems that there's no peace, there's no way to find that place of balance and peace, and a sense that everything that's unfolding before us is purposeful and is going to be for the good and make sense. It's a very, very hard thing to find, especially today, because we're in the last generation, and one of the things that happens in the last generation, and when I say the last generation, I mean we are approaching the time where there's going to be a cosmic shift, and you don't have to be religious to know this. Everybody's talking about the fact that we have cycles in history where empires rise to the top and ideas come to the forefront. We had the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians. We had I'm sure I'm going to miss some, but we had the Turks, we had the British, we had the Americans, right? These are all empires that rise on their ideas. Each one of these each one of these empires came to take another step in the development of humanity. So the Persians were very interested in beauty. Beauty is a very important quality, and so on and so forth. I won't go through all of them. I don't even know all of them. But the point is that most people see, or a lot of people see, that we're in crisis in the world, and that whatever the systems were that held us together are falling apart. And each time that these systems collapse and something else comes, first of all, there's a lot of chaos and a lot of fear and a lot of, discovery and invention and all these ways of trying to figure out how to move forward. So each time one of these cycles goes through, it gets more and more. We become more and more connected to each other, and the stakes become higher and higher. And so this time around, we are having this kind of collapse for the first time on a truly global scale, where the problems that we're all facing truly affect everyone. And so this is, if you look on the side of holiness, you have everything that happens on the side of holiness. You have on the side of the mundane or the secular, or the things that are not perhaps positive, right? So you have this dualistic relationship between everything that's happening for the good also seems to be happening for the bad, right? The internet, there was this huge change for everybody, and there was equally good things that came out of it and equally bad things came out of it. So the Torah, you see that as the Torah developed, first we had only 70 people who were doing this, who went down to Egypt, and then we had the Jewish nation. And so as we keep doing this, as we have these like rise and collapse, it's called Ratzu V'Shuv in Chassidut, and it's called going up and coming down in Kabbalah, that each time we go through this cycle, we include more and more people, more and more of everything in the system. And so we're in a very special time because people feel that whatever's coming next is truly global and cosmic and important, and a shift that we have not seen before. And so this is what is known as the coming of the Messiah. That's what we say in Judaism. We're waiting for Mashiach. And so this is what the language can sometimes get people a little bit, tripped up, but we're all talking about the same thing, that something has to happen, something has to change for us to get to a better place, okay? So, I want to continue with what Rav Terjman said, because he, I felt, did an amazing job at explaining what we want. And I think that the next step in the conversation, and again, it's the same conversation that all the teachers here are having. I'm just speaking about it in the language of the Bala Sulam. And so the question is, how do we accomplish this thing? How do we come into our boundaries? How do we come into balance with ourselves, with each other, with nature, and with the world? That's a very good question, okay? And so let's see if we can get into the weeds a little bit, dive into this a little bit, and try to see, Al Pi Ashlag, according to the method of Ashlag, how that's accomplished. What is the work, okay? So the first thing we really have to do is we have to really take a little self-examination. We have to take a little test here, okay? So we have to think, I remember when I was a kid, we used to think if I was alive during the Holocaust, I definitely would have hit people. I definitely would have been a partisan. I definitely would have been the hero in that story. And then as we get into the same kind of crises, we see that that's a very, very rare individual who really steps out and goes against everything that's happening and takes these supreme risks, okay? So the first thing that I think that we should ask ourselves, and there's no shame here, and there's no, being honest about not being ready for something, is the more you're ready for something, the more you question if you're ready for something. So there's a paradox there, right? So let's not be scared to tell ourselves the truth, because as you start to learn Ashlag, you say, you know what, this is harder than I thought, this is more demanding than I thought, and maybe I'm not ready for it. And that's a good thing when you realize that, because that's when you reach out for something beyond yourself, okay? So it's a good thing to say, I'm not sure that I'm not up for this challenge. But let's just ask ourselves, let's take there's two analogies. We could use the analogy of Egypt, and we can use the analogy of prison. They're both the same thing. Egypt is the manifestation of the ego. A big city, the biggest cities are the place where all the ego, people who want to become famous, people who want to become rich, people who want to be looked at, go to the big city. They go to New York, they go to LA, they go to Moscow, they go to London, right? That's Egypt. And so when we're saying we want the Israelites were trying to escape Egypt, we're talking about trying to escape the ego, trying to escape this overwhelming sense that the more I take, the more I try, the worse it gets. I'm never happy, it's never enough, right? So this is what the story in the Torah is. It's a language, and it's suppressed, it's hidden, because most people are not ready to hear the bad news. And some people are not, they would rather stay in Egypt. So in the story of the Israelites, 4/5 of the Jewish people, the Israelites who were in Egypt, said, I want to stay in Israel. I want to try one more time for the Ferrari. I want to try one more time to be famous. So most people don't want to leave Egypt. So what happens is we're put under more and more pressure by nature, by society, and this is all being done by the God of nature, which is the God Elohim, that we're being pressured, okay? And so let's just take a little bit of we had COVID. We just got past COVID, which was this global crisis, and first time that everybody in the world was really dealing with the same thing. We had the nuclear arms race with Russia, but this time it was a really thing that on an individual level, every person really was somehow had to make a decision, okay? So, and now in Israel, we're dealing with another crisis, a national crisis of the judicial reform. So we have people who want to to hem in the Supreme Court in Israel, and then we have people who feel that by doing that we are we don't want to do that. We need the Supreme Court here to be a checks and balance on the government, on the parliament. Okay, let's not get into the specifics. The point is that you're going to meet 98% of the people that you meet are going to be on one side of this argument or other. So with COVID, half the people were on the side of don't get vaxxed, and then some people were on the side of you must get vaxxed, right? And what's interesting is that both sides, both groups, are convinced that they are the ones who are saving the world, and the other person is destroying the world. And so now we have this. This happens everywhere. It happens on every level. It happens inside of yourself. You know, part of me wants to be a doctor, and part of me wants to stay in bed all day. Part of me, and everybody has. We live in a dualistic construct, so this is something that is inescapable. It just seems to build and build and build. So you can ask yourself, when COVID happened, was I somebody who was very convinced of my position, and was I just arguing the whole time and making fun of the other side? Was I somebody who was saying, I'm convinced that my position is the right position, and the other side is the wrong position, and they're damaging the world, and I'm saving the world, right? So if a person is still in that kind of busy with that debate, no matter what the crisis is, they find themselves, so in Orthodox Judaism, Torah Judaism, you have different groups. So some people spend their whole day saying, you know, this group, Chabad is right and everybody else is wrong, or, you know, Satmar is right and the Litvish are wrong, or right, you know, everybody has a position, and they spend a lot of their time, perhaps all their time, in this fight. Now, what we're trying to, the prerequisite for learning Ashlag, for needing Ashlag, for needing Kabbalah, for needing Torah and mitzvos. I don't care if it's not Ashlag, if it's Rav Nachman, or if it's Chabad, it does not matter. The person who needs the medicine is the person who needs to escape Egypt. The person who wants to break out of prison is the person who feels like they are in prison. So if you feel like, I don't care if you're on this side or that side, I want to be done with all of this. I want to rise above this thing that keeps happening. I don't want to go into the next battle and the next battle and be on one side or the other. I don't want to be a liberal angry at conservatives, and I don't want to be a conservative angry at liberals. I don't want to be a religious person who's angry at secular people. I don't want to be a secular person who's convinced that religious people are destroying the world. You see this? You see what's happening? It's just us against us. There's nobody else here. It's just a big game where we're all fighting against ourselves, and we're fighting against each other, and we're all just one huge connected cell, one soul, one unit. We're all one. Imagine we fight with ourselves. So that's what we're doing. We're fighting with ourselves. And so when a person realizes this, so we have people who are studying Torah who are not finished with this. They want to get up every day and they want to tell all the other groups that they're missing something, and that they're the only ones who know something, and that they're right and everybody else is wrong. We have people in Israel who are fighting. Half of them are on one side of this debate, and the other ones are on the other side of the debate, right? It goes on and on and on. We have the same thing with COVID. So check yourself. If you're a person, doesn't mean you're a bad person, but if you're a person who spent all of COVID arguing against the opposite side of the issue of whether or not to be vaccinated, that's something to reflect on. That you don't perhaps yet see that there is a door, an invitation to rise above the differences and to somehow find balance and unity. And everybody pays lip service to this because they don't think it's necessarily possible. So people say, I'm waiting for Mashiach. I'm waiting for something to happen, some invention, some holy person, something to happen where the change is just going to happen and it's going to be magic, and somehow we're going to be able to do something that we weren't able to do together and unite in love and harmony. The hippies tried it in the 60s. Everybody's been trying it for all of time. And so the job is to look to see if anybody has a solution, a method for doing this, for rising outside of your ego. And so in the Torah, they tell a story of the Israelites. First, it started with Abraham, and Abraham got together a group of people, and they connected with each other, and they rose out of their ego, and they found harmony and peace and balance within their small group. And then the Israelites went down to Egypt, and then they went to Israel, and each time there was larger and larger groups of people who were included in this system. So the Baal HaSulam comes, and the Zohar, first one to write it down was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and that is the story. It's a cryptic language, but it's telling you how to rise outside of your ego. And the first thing you have to do is you have to need to rise out of your ego. You have to feel some reason. So either you appreciate what God is and you're so in love with him that you want to get to him and you don't care. Like if you're in love with somebody and you don't care if you have to move to the worst neighborhood in the United States, and you don't care if you have to become a dentist, you're going to do whatever you have to do, whatever you can do to be with this person, right? So if you have that feeling about Hashem, you realize that Hashem is Ein Ol Mavado, there's nothing else but Hashem, and Hashem is a Tov U'Meitiv, Hashem is good who's doing good, and you see this somehow, you are a person who's being drawn by love, and you're saying, I want to unify the whole world, I want everybody to be in love and peace, because you realize that that is what God is trying to accomplish here, right? If you don't see that, like most of us, then what we faced with is a crisis, a never-ending stream of crises where we are being compelled forward to realize that there's never going to be a way to stay within our egos and solve the problems of humanity. Okay? So I think that's clear. Any questions? Nobody? Anybody have anything to add on this? Was it clear? Okay. So I promised that we're gonna start speaking about the role of women in Ashlag Kaballah. Okay, and when I say Ashlag Kaballah, I am saying the explanation and the methodology put forth by the Baal HaSulam on how to understand the Torah. I'm not talking about something outside of the Torah. I'm not talking about something independent of anybody else's path. I'm talking about this great rabbi's way of describing, like if you were going to go mountain climbing and there was 3 different mountain climbers and they each had a different way of style of climbing the mountain, you would understand that they're still all climbing the same mountain, okay? So this is something that there's a very big conversation here, okay? We have, in the secular world, something has seemed to gone very wrong with feminism. The idea of feminism sounded like a good idea when it started, and now it seems to have been gone off the rails. We have, gender dysphoria now, where people don't know if they're a man or a woman. So we see that the collapse is so fundamental in society now that people don't even know who they are. And so we can start the conversation about the method in earnest, about the method of Ashlag Kaballah. How do we transcend our ego? How do we become givers? How do we become connected to God? Meaning, how do we become connected to the light of love and balance and unity and all the good things that we all want, right? How do we do that? And so let's start by talking about the 4 levels of development, okay? In Torah Judaism, we have many names for God, depending on what we're trying to learn about him. God is one thing, but sometimes we want to learn about him in different aspects. The God of nature, the transcendent God, right? And we have all these different names that we refer. So one of the main names is the God that takes us out of Egypt, the God that is transcendent, which is in Hebrew, Yud, a Hey, and a Vav, and a Hey. We don't say the name out loud, so we're just spelling it. But people know the name. We just say Hashem, but it's the letter Yud, the letter Hey, the letter Vav, and the letter Hey. Now each one of these letters corresponds to these 4 levels. So when we look at the spheros, we look at all of the levels of consciousness. We can break it down many, many times, actually infinite numbers of times. But the first way that we break it down is into 4. And so we have the top is the Yud, the next level is the Hey, and the next level is the Vav, and the last letter is the Hey, okay? So, for our conversation that we're starting out to try to understand what we're talking about in Ashlag Kaballah, because we're only talking about one thing. We're talking about how to get outside of our egos and fix the world and come into, and make the world the way God wanted the world to be, okay? So the way God made the world, he created us so that we're born onto one level, and then we have to try to, through our own lives and through history, try to climb this ladder of consciousness. Okay, so the bottom hay, the last letter of God's name, the transcendent name of God, is when we receive in order to receive. This is when we are not in holiness, when we are not in kedusha, when we are not being a good person, when we're being selfish, when we're being egomaniacs, when we're being narcissists. Okay, that is the level that for most of history, and for many people, even on this history, and even for all of us, on some way, we're all existing in this. You know, when I take something that I want, because I'm a little bit stronger than the next guy, or let's say there's a girl over there, and I'm a little bit funnier, so I go over and I get her instead of somebody else getting. When I'm doing that, when I'm in that mode, I'm trying to get what I can get with all of whatever I have in life, right? So, that is called, a baby comes out going like this, give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. And a baby is beautiful because a baby is living their truth. But if somebody stays a baby, it's very unattractive, right? So, but an actual baby is very cute. When it wants to drink and it wants to eat, you want to help it, but it's being itself. And so, the level of receiving in order to receive is where we start from, okay? Then we graduate to the first level of holiness, the very beginning of altruism, the very beginning of being a good person. And that is called giving in order to receive, okay? The reason why this is good is because the other person still gets something. So if I hire a plumber and I really want my bathroom to be built very nicely, right? I think that the meeting ended. Should we pause? Okay. So the reason why this is an important step forward is because we are trying to respect each other. And so I'm saying, if you build me a bathroom, I will pay you. So you're getting something and I'm getting something, okay? So we're having exchange. So because we both agree and we're both getting something, it's a very, very huge step forward. It's much better than me coming in and taking your stuff because I can. Okay, so it's a huge step forward, and it's the beginning of holiness. And most of us operate most of the time in that place, and that's a good thing. Where that's a very, if we're doing that, you're not stealing, you're paying people for their services, right? And you're not ripping people off. This is a very good thing, okay? The next level, which is a very, very high level, is the third level. So we had the lower hay, then we had the vav, and then we have the higher hay. So now we're in the higher hay, the third level up. This is a very, very, very high level, and we have a lot of work to do, both within ourselves and within society, in our families, with our marriages, and with our communities, and with our nation, and with the entire world. We have a lot of work to be able to get to this third level. And in Torah Judaism, when somebody reaches this level, we call them a full tzaddik. We call them a fully righteous person. And we have, in each generation, we know people who their whole life seems to be just completely, revolves around doing things for other people and helping other people with no ulterior motive. There's a lot of people who can do things for other people, but they really want something themselves. They either want everybody to praise them, or they really want your love and your attention, or something they want from you. But this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about fully righteous, where a person literally wants to, they feel the other people more than they feel themselves. Their vessels they see the other people's vessels. They feel the other people's vessels. When other people are happy, that is how they feel happiness, okay? And so that third level is called giving in order to give, okay? You wake up in the morning and you say, God, I want to be close to you. You give to everybody, and I want to be just like you, and I want to give and give and give and give, and that's what makes me happy. That's what fulfills me, right? That is the third level, okay? Now here's where things get a little interesting, because most of us would say that is the whole thing. That should be the whole show. Everybody's a giver, and it's fantastic, right? No. There's an even higher level, and this is why. I'll speak about the feminine aspect in a second, but let me just first say what the last level is. It's when you receive things, because you want the other person to be happy. So for this to happen, you have to be in very deep relationships with people, and you have to actually see that the other person wants to give to you. So you're walking around and everybody wants to give you something. So what happens magically is you want to give some things to them too. But there's something else. If they're giving you something, they're not going to be happy. If they buy you a tie and you take the tie and you say thank you, but you don't really want the tie, there's something lacking in the relationship, right? So they want to figure out what is it that this person really wants. I know this person really wants new shoes. I'm going to get them new shoes, and then I want to see that they enjoy the shoes, right? So that is the final. That is called Gamar Tikkun. That is called the end of correction, and that is what we say that God wanted to give over something to this created being's goodness. So what is the whole entirety of the goodness? Is that we receive everything, but that it doesn't hurt us and doesn't make us bring distance to us or imbalance to us, but that we actually receive everything, and it brings us closer to everybody else, brings us closer to ourselves, brings us closer to nature, brings us closer to our community, closer to our families, right? By accepting things. Imagine that you're just going to be accepting presents all day, and it's going to get you not only the actual present, but you're going to become closer to everybody else around you, right? So this is the final stage in Ashlag Kaballah. Now,
it's the same as the first one, but with a different intention. You're still receiving, you're still taking.
You only have half in the first time. In the first time, you're correct. So you're right that you're still taking, right? But here, you're taking everything at the final stage. It's not hurting you, and you're taking it. You're enjoying it, but you never lose the desire to make sure that the other person is being pleased, the other.
You're taking it not because you want it necessarily, but you're taking it because you want to give joy to the person giving it.
Even more than that, you want it, but you want to be close to the person, and so you realize that by wanting it, the fact that you desire ice cream is such an amazing thing, because I can now show you how much I love you because I'm eating your ice cream. So without the ice cream, I would not be able to get as close to you as I could if I take and truly enjoy what you're giving me. The problem is that we're taking it selfishly. So when we take it selfishly, it has the opposite effect that we want it to have, that God wants it to have, that God intended it to have. And so we will go into the reasons, why did God have to do this? Why couldn't God just make it that way to begin with? And we spoke about it already, and we'll go into it in a later lesson, because I want to talk about the feminine aspect now. But the reason for that is that we're going to go back with sense of self, free will, and the ability to reciprocate in a relationship. Those are the things that we didn't have when the first time around, and we'll go into that. And then Ashlag Kaballah, the Talmud Esesphiros, is literally a map of each step by step of drawing down this light that changes you, that fixes you in each stage. And you'll see that it's exactly the same story. Everything's a fractal. Exactly what we said now is just going to be done in a very intricate way that is very specific. And you're going to feel it. If you don't feel it, you're just reading a book. We're going to go through, you see, that's why preparation, Rabbi Shalom Ashlag, the son of the Baal Sulam, who is my teacher's teacher, was so adamant about doing preparation. No, you never stop doing this. What we're doing now, we will do for the rest of study. This never stops. Because if you don't know that you're supposed to be feeling it and you lose sight of that somehow, you're not doing it. It's like if you forget, let's say you're in a classroom learning about mountain climbing and you're watching a movie about mountain climbing, you forget that you're not even on a mountain, you're just watching mountain climbing or reading the book. There's a very big problem because you forgot that there's an actual mountain. You're going to go out there and climb the actual mountain. So we don't want to read the book. I had a rabbi in Chabad who once said, when Mashiach comes, we're going to just know we're going to know the real reason for everything that we learned. Let's not. And so I'm saying here, Ashlag says, don't wait. It's time to go. It's time to climb the actual mountain. We had COVID. We have this massive crisis now in Israel. We have the crisis with. It's time. If you feel ready to go, then the Ari HaKodesh, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Sulam says, go. It's time to go. If you feel that the world is in crisis and you feeling choked by all of this fighting and by all of this constant running in a treadmill, go. It's time to go. Stop being in the classroom. Stop waiting for some magical helicopter to come and take you up to the top of the mountain and climb the mountain. Is it scary? Yes. Can you do it? No, not by yourself. We could do it if we're in a group, but it's time to go. If you don't feel it's time to go, then that's okay. If you feel that you are still want to live in Miami and you're trying to save up money to get a Ferrari, it's okay. No one's coming after you. We're not saying, or if you feel that you want to learn Gemara and you understand what I'm saying and it's obvious to you, then that's okay. But if you are hearing this and it sounds like a novelty to you, that you can actually go and bring Mashiach to yourself and actually get out of this egoistic thing, leave Egypt. If you're surprised that is not just a story in a book, and you're telling me that people are doing it and people have been doing it every generation, and now this generation more people are doing it, and everybody's going to do it. If that's a revelation to you because you didn't understand that by learning Rav Nachman or learning Ashlag Kaballah Chassidus or sitting through a Gemara shir where they were telling you that a cow fell into a hole and you need a contract to buy some beans, if you didn't get that, then I tell you here, that's what Rav Ashlag says, and that's what everybody's saying. You're ready to go, okay? So now I just went back to the first part of the class, but here we are back with the feminine, okay? So why is and we're going to go through this again. I know I spoke very quickly just now, okay, everybody? So hopefully, God willing, we'll be going through this again and again and clarifying, and everybody will bring their own ideas to the table. And one of the beautiful things about Ashlag Kaballah is that the group is going to have to come up with a strategy. This is not, if we decide to go up to a mountain and you have the food and you have the climbing gear and you have the compass and whatever else, we're going to have to agree how to do this. And so the beautiful thing is that when you study Ashlag Kaballah, we get together and we say, how should we do this? I don't know. Do you know how? Should we go through the woods? Should we go this way? Should we go that way? I don't know. What do you guys think? And that's literally, we're not just talking about it anymore. We're going to climb. If we all went to the woods and we each had a different piece of equipment, believe me, we'd start to discuss. And I say, hey, wait a minute, I don't want to go that way. I want to go the other way. That's what we're going to start to do when you study Ashlag, and that's what the rabbis are doing in these books. That's what they're discussing. How should we do this? So I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just return to the part, the class about the feminine. So why are we saying in Kabbalah the feminine rises? That as we move through history, the feminine becomes more and more important, okay? This is a very hard conversation because it could be misunderstood. We're not talking about men and women. We're talking about the feminine aspect and the male aspect, okay? So we talked about these 4 levels. We discussed how the bottom level is rocks, inanimate, and the next level are plants, and the next level are animals, and then the top level is the level of Adam, of man, of Adam Kadmon, of all of us together, of the speaking level, the creative level. This is something that's confusing in Kabbalah because there's so many different ways to say the same thing, and people are like, wait, where am I? What am I talking about? So don't get confused and don't try to memorize all the names. We're just talking about these stages, okay? So right now we're talking about male and female, and so we're trying to plug it in. It's a fractal, meaning that this way of dividing things isn't everything. You can divide everything this way, so don't worry if we're going to name it something else because it's in everything. So now we're talking about men and women, okay? I'm sorry, about the male and female. We all have in us male and female aspects. The proof of that is, look at this generation. Now we have people who don't know if they're a man or they're a woman. They're not lying. They are telling you the truth, that they had feminism, they have people entering the workforce, and now all of these changes, and people are still not happy, and things are going the wrong way, and people are wondering, who am I even? So let's discuss what we're talking about, what Ashlag is talking about when he says that the work is between a man and a woman, the male and female aspects, okay? So we are all born into the lowest level. Most of us, 99.9% of us, are born into, we care about ourselves and we experience the world egoistically. We see everybody else as, right, and we want things for ourselves. When we want that, we are living in the uncorrected feminine aspect. Okay, that's the lowest level. So throughout history, what's happened is people say women are lower than men. On this chart, bad women are lower than bad men. Now that is something really, really bad to focus on because we're talking about feminine aspect and male aspect. Yes, it's true that in history, bad men were being bad to bad women, and bad men were being bad to good women. But let's not digress. The point is that when all of us are acting selfishly and just taking, right? If I'm very strong and I come in and I grab something with the soda away from you and I drink it, I am acting out of my feminine, uncorrected feminine aspect, okay? Now, we have a revealed Torah and we have the internal Torah, right? So people make a very big mistake. They think, I'm Jewish on the outside, it means I'm acting Jewish on the inside. No, that's not true. I'm a woman on the outside, it means I'm acting like a woman on the inside. No, that's not true. I'm pretty on the outside, it means I'm pretty on the inside. No, that's not true. These two things are not, they don't come together. You can be something on the outside, you can be acting a certain way on the outside, you can be manifest in some way on the outside. So if you go to a big business and there's a woman who's in charge of the whole place, she looks like she's a woman on the outside, and inside she may be living out a very masculine identity, okay? So let's go on to the next step, okay? So the next step is the uncorrected man, the uncorrected male aspect, okay? If a person is going around and being very clever and they are buying up stuff and they're running companies, they are trying to get what they want out of life. The fact that they are helping people get work and they have a non-profit organization and they have they have 100 people that they're giving salaries to. They're busy getting rich themselves. They're not busy helping these people. They didn't say, this is the best way to help somebody is to open up a high-tech company in San Francisco, and they want the Ferrari and they want the house, and what they also want is they want to feel good about themselves. They want people to think they're a good person, so it never ends. The ego is very, very corrupting force. So people stand up and say, Bill Gates, I am non-profit, I'm helping the whole world, I'm making this vaccine. You're trying to get rich. You're buying up all the farmland. And not only that, that's not enough for you. Your ego is so big, you're so voraciously hungry that you want everybody to bow down to you and say, you are saving the world, you are the Messiah. You see what's happening? Most of us know Bill Gates is not a holy person who is filled with the desire to unite the world and he just needs to be good to everybody, right? Nothing against Bill Gates, please don't sue me, I don't know. I'm just saying, that's I think that's the conventional wisdom on Bill Gates. Anyway, so what's happened in society is that people are uncorrected, men and women. So what happened is that women said, hey, the men are slightly ahead of us in this game, in this egoistic game. Let's try to be uncorrected men. Let's move from being non-corrected women to being non-corrected men. Let me be an egoistic woman to being an egoistic man. This was a tremendous corruption. Back in the 50s and the 60s and the hippies, it seemed like a great idea. In academia, I went to university, studied philosophy, studied communication. It seemed like they were making a lot of sense, but that's not what the Torah says. The Torah says you have an outside and you have an inside. God randomly in your life made you a man, made you a woman. You don't know why. You were born in America, you were born in England. We don't know why, right? That's the outside. And when we have the inside. So let's not try to become, let's not shoot for being something that's slightly better than us, slightly more egoistic than us, and just as corrupted as us, if not more so. That was the corruption that we are facing now in society. So in the Torah we say, no. Let's all of us correct everything. Whether or not you're a man or a woman, that was chosen for you. Your job as a man, your job as a woman, that was chosen for you, okay? But we all have to work together with each other to try to transcend our egos, which we embody either as men or as women. I think that makes sense, right? So then we move to the next. So I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions about?
Yeah, but you go on and say how to develop women, develop women, and develop men.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So we have 6,000 years of development of the Torah, okay? In each generation, there were very few people who were ready to do this work of transcending. The rest of us had to learn the lesson of it's not going to work. We had to, so in the Torah, we have all these characters. Those characters are inside of us. We have Jacob, who is our good inclination, and we have Esav, who is our egoistic inclination. Esav just wanted more and more sheep, and more wives, and more land. and he was not ready to see. In the end of his life, he actually did realize it, okay? But in the story in the Bible, Esav, when he died, he didn't correct his body, but his mind he realized, oh, there's no feeding this animal. There's no getting over this ego. This ego is never going to be happy. I'm never going to get enough cars or anything else to make this a peaceful, pleasant, successful operation. But yet, here we go. Every generation, we have people who stem to get to the forefront and say, I am going to be the one to become super rich. I'm going to become the president, and I am going to fix everything. Are we going to transcend our egos? No. Are we going to become good people? No. I'm going to make this amazing computer AI thing, and that's going to be the solution. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that's not what the Torah says. The Torah says that we have to retrace the steps that our soul came down. We came down and became more and more egoistic, and we have to go back up and become more and more transcendent. Now, there's a little wrinkle here, which is beautiful. It says Avram Avinu, Abraham, bought a Maris HaMachpelah, a 2-level cave. So this is something that we've covered already, but we'll cover it again. That in a lot of systems, they want to leave behind the physical, leave behind the ego. But we don't say that in Torah. So in Torah, there is a pharaoh on the side of Tuma, the egoistic pharaoh. But then the pharaoh who is evil. He's focused on himself. But there's also a pharaoh, an ego that's on the side of Kedusha. That in the Torah system, we learn how to talk to our egos in a way that explains to our egos that the best way for us to live is in balance, and that is the way to get your full pleasure on the egoistic level. In other words, we now know today, this is something that you didn't know 500 years ago, you know today. Today somebody knows, if I have 1,000 calories, I'm starving and I'm miserable. But if I have 4,000 calories a day, I'm obese and sick and have every kind of disease. So what I want to enjoy cake and ice cream is I want 1,800 calories a day. I want balance. So in the Torah system, we talked to Paro. Moshe kept talking to Paro. Moshe and Paro were actually very close. They actually talked all the time. So Moshe is trying to convince Paro that to know who the God Yud Kei Vav Kei is, to know that the way for you to be the happiest Paro you're going to be, the happiest egoistic person you're going to be, is by coming into balance with everybody else. Now, as many times as you tell Paro that, he doesn't believe it. He believes it after you beat him up. After COVID, he believes it for 2 minutes, and after the judicial whatever this is called, the reforms the battle that's happening in Israel right now, with the Supreme Court and the Parliament, and the people are on both sides of the issue. When you get scared, you believe it for 30 seconds. Maybe we should all just get along here. Maybe if we don't get along, the whole country's going to collapse. Okay, so let's make peace. So Paro keeps saying, you have to talk to Paro over and over and over again and say, I promise you that the best way for your ego to survive here is for you to come into balance with everybody else, okay? But your ego doesn't want to hear this. Your ego just hopes and hopes and hopes. Can't I just have the Ferrari and be the best and have everybody be under me, okay? So we see when the Israelites came down to Egypt, they were in a developmental stage. They weren't as egoistic. Everybody's becoming more and more egoistic. So when they had 7 years of famine in Egypt, they got terrified. They couldn't have any food. They said Yosef, who was the transcendent, they said let him manage. They agreed to this deal. They said, you know what? You get all the power, you decide how much we're going to eat, because if you leave it to us, I'm going to take all the food and I'm going to try to sell it to everybody else, and then we're all going to starve, we're going to get into fights, they're going to come and kill me, and I'm not going to have anything. So if the person gets scared enough, so that's why Rav Ashlag says, you should be scared already. Be scared, be worried that the world is in crisis enough. And if a person can get, I heard the last class where we're trying to convince ourselves that it's that we should love Hashem and that we should do the right thing. And so the reason why we don't do this is because we're not really connecting all the dots, because we don't connect the fact that if we understood the global warming and that the judicial crisis and that COVID was this thing telling us that it's not going to work out, these are the plagues. These are the plagues telling us it's time to transcend your ego it's going to get worse and worse here. Each plague got worse. And so some people woke up by the third plague, they had enough, and they said, okay, you know what? I'm going to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm going to go out, right? So I think that this language in Ashlag Kaballah is very, very clear for this generation, where you can really understand very, very, very clearly exactly that everything is everything. I mean, everything that's happening to us is literally part of what the Torah is talking about. Should I go on? Do we have more time? Or
Just one question.
Yes,
do you
please.
have to, on the 4 levels, do you have to go from level 4 to level 3 to level 2 to level 1 in that order, or can you transcend from level 4 to level 1?
That is an amazing question, and I think it's a question that probably only somebody who is learning a lot of Torah could ask. So it's a very, very beautiful and deep question, and the answer is yes. The answer is that in Chassidut, which the Lubavitch Rebbe says is higher than Kabbalah, is higher than Kabbalah, meaning that this is a linear process. We have to retrace our steps, but our bodies are in time and space, but our minds are free to imagine, and that's why imagination on the side of Kedusha is such an important thing. So don't wait. The Baal HaSulam says, when you win the lottery and you get the lottery ticket, you don't start celebrating when they give you the money in the bank, when you go to pick up the money. You start celebrating the second that you see on the TV that you have the winning numbers. You start to celebrate. That is when you're a rich person. That is when you invite everybody over and you buy steak for everybody, not when the money comes out of the bank. So, in the last class, one of our amazing teachers here was giving Ilio, what's his last name? Pereira gave an amazing class. And so we have the ability we're in a linear system. We have to go back and retrace our steps, step by step. But we can also jump over. We can also just imagine how great it's going to be and how wonderful it is, and start just living in a connected place. So the Ramak, we had Rabbi Fishman with an art Fishman gave a beautiful class down last week at the cemetery at the Ramak's yard site, and explained just this thing, that the Ramak was not happy enough with what the Ari said. He said, you have to go each level by level. He says, okay, just jump into Keter, jump all the way into the Gemar Tikkun. Know that this is what they're talking about, and imagine yourself in this place where you just love everybody and you're giving to everybody and you're receiving everything with this thing. Don't wait for your ego, your paro, to say, yes, I agree to this and I'm going to go. You do have to retrace each step. So we have now, and I think that's why you see everything in the world is preparing us for this, and that's why everything used to be in a linear system. And now we have things that are non-linear. So the internet is non-linear. We used to have I'm an editor, and we used to have to edit linearly. We used to put the film onto these big wheels and go step by step. Now we can go anywhere we want in the computer and look at the beginning, look at the end, look at the middle.
That's what the elevated
Correct.
is.
So the answer is yes. We have to go step by step, and we have to jump to the end right away, right now.